Hola, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm happy to introduce to you our beautiful guest for this podcast episode. And the title of this episode is How to Communicate Better in the Midst of Uncertainty. She's a financial advisor and unit manager by day and a writer by night. She recently self published an art and poetry book as a testament that you can pursue your passions even in these challenging times. She is also active in volunteering for CCF and Global Shapers Manila Hub. She is also a life coach and an avid traveler. Please welcome Isis Huang. Hi,
Hi.
Isis. So, to start off this episode, can you enlighten us about your experiences with regards to communication of what worked and what didn't work for you?
There are, of course, a lot of types of communication, right? First is you have to consider your audience. No? Who are you talking to? Like, is it a good friend, a close friend, or is it someone who you just met? Someone who you don't know yet personally, or is it someone who you're also already close with, or is it someone that you're already acquainted with? No, so the next thing is you have to consider what exactly is it that you want to communicate. If it's about work, is it something urgent, or is it something that not really urgent, but you just want to give a heads up, or you want to remind that person? So it depends on the content, or what message you want to send, right, to the receiver or to the audience. So is if it's urgent, of course you have to communicate it with urgency. If it's not really urgent, then make it as a reminder, or as something that they need to take note of. If it's something also that a sad news, right? So you have to also temper your message, your tone changes, and the manner of your speaking also changes. If it's also something happy, a happy news that you want to communicate, like a congratulations on an achievement, then go all out, be excited, communicate it with emotions, right? Of happiness, excitement, right? And of course, number three is the general sense or atmosphere. We have different atmospheres together with the content, right? So if it's a professional atmosphere, right? If it's an interview or if it's a business meeting, then the atmosphere of the conversation is professional, right?
Mhm.
It's formal and professional. But if you're talking to a friend, then the atmosphere is a little bit informal, right? So it's informal. We can be casual, right? You
Mhm.
can use informal language, and you talk to them casually because they're your friend, they're your good friends, right? So that's the atmosphere, right? Also, of course, it depends also on the situation. So the atmosphere plays on the situation of the communication or the event in which you are communicating to that person, right? Like I said, if it's about bringing some bad news or sad news, then you have to temper your tone, adjust the words that you're about to say, adjust your tone, your how you deliver it, right? And of
Mhm.
course, if it's something positive, right, then you also adjust how you send that message. So the atmosphere again differs, right? The three key things for me is number one, really considering your audience. Number two is really the message or the content that you want to send to your audience. And number three is the atmosphere where you will be sending that message or the content or what you will be speaking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. And
Yeah.
one of the things that really resonated with me with what you said was it's not just the words that you say, but rather the tone and the body language, right?
Yes,
Because
yes,
your body
definitely,
language
definitely.
speaks a lot aside from just the words that you're saying because we have eyes and we're very observant.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you
So,
for that, Isis.
especially, when
Mm-hmm.
you're communicating in person, right? You observe the body language, the
Mm-hmm.
tone of voice, and
Yeah.
even how he or she sits across you, in
Mm.
front of you, beside you. So all these things have sends us also a message, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these little details are very important when you're talking or communicating to someone, right? At the end of the day, you just have to be observant as well, diba?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's also your intuition or your gut feel, how you can communicate to that person effectively, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes if you already know the person, then that's to your advantage because alam mo na yun, huli mo na yung kiliti niya, you know how
Mm.
to talk to that person, right? But if
Yeah.
it's someone new, like it's if it's a stranger, right, or a new acquaintance, then you just have to observe again and watch out for the little details that will help you communicate better.
It really depends on the relationship, 'di ba? Yung bond
Yes,
mo with that
yes,
person at how
yes.
you're able to really kasi if kilala mo na yung tao, you know how
Correct,
to
correct.
adjust properly based on the person. Not naman to
Yes,
say na you're trying to please that person, but rather
yes,
you already
yes,
know
yes,
that person very well, what their character
yes,
is, how they would
yes,
respond, what their triggers are. And at the same
yes,
time, yung isang part naman na if hindi mo close yung tao, it takes a while to adjust. 'Di ba? Like you said, you really have to
yes,
see
yes,
and observe, okay, how will this
yes,
person
yes.
reacts, how would this person is, or ano yung background niya. So yeah, that's great. So
Yep, yep.
with all of those wonderful insights that you've shared, now we're gonna go to number two, which is from those
Yes.
experiences. Can you give us your takeaway on how to communicate better in the midst of uncertainty?
I think that this is really an important topic right now because a lot of people are actually struggling with how to communicate better, right? Having conversations that last. LAST. It's actually an acronym. L stands for listen, A for ask, S for share, and T for trust. And I'd like to go through each one of these acronym. No? So let's start with letter L first. No? So listen. It's very important for us to listen. And when I say listen, it's really not just opening our ears, but actually opening our other senses as well. So, and also really opening our heart, no? Not just our ears to listen, but our hearts to listen as well. And when you listen, first and foremost, number one is you have to listen with full focus and 100% attention. Mia, I have to admit, before the pandemic happened, I am actually guilty of not giving my 100% focus or my full attention because life was just so busy back then, right? A lot of things happening. And even when the person is already in front of me and I'm talking to them, sometimes my phone would distract me, and I'm multitasking. So I'm texting someone, but I'm talking to someone in front. So that's not giving your 100% attention or your full focus,
Mhm.
right? Because you're actually glancing on your phone and then you're talking to a friend. So it's like your attention is divided. So that's not a good example. Also, not good for the person you're talking to, right? Because the person that you're talking to deserves your full and 100%
Mm,
attention.
mm, mm.
Now, I have learned my lesson from that. And right now, when I'm really talking to someone, I try to give 100% attention, right? There's actually a term that they call it when you're all in the table and when you're not really talking to each other and just focused
Mm.
on your phones. It's called fobbing. It's snubbing with your phone. That's why it's fobbing. So that's PHUBBING. That's not really giving your
Mm.
100% attention. And I've learned my lesson from that. And one of the persons that I work with commented that you can't do both. The person that you're talking to deserves your 100% attention. Second is listening with empathy. So, listening with your heart, opening your heart, and listening to the things that are not said also. You have, as I've said, you have to observe their tone, their voice, and sometimes they can say something, but it's not really what they want to say to you. That's why you have to be more attentive to them. That's why number one is really giving them your full attention. And then second is listening with empathy and trying to open your heart, connect to what they really want to say to you. And last but not the least, for our letter L acronym, listen, is listen to understand and not to reply. Because sometimes when we listen, we already think of what we want to say to the other person, right? We get ahead of ourselves. What's
Mhm.
in our mind is our response, but we're not trying to listen or understand what the other person is saying.
Mm.
We should listen to understand them first before reacting or responding or replying.
Mhm.
So I also do this, right? When we're talking to someone and you're already trying to think what you're going to say or what you're going to respond, right? But I think we should pause and really try to understand what the other person is saying first before we
Yeah.
reply or give a response. That's for our first acronym L, which is listen. Okay.
Mm.
Second is for ask. So we need to ask questions. In order for us to understand the other person better, we need to ask questions and ask relevant questions, right? We shouldn't be afraid to ask questions because in asking questions, then that's how you can get answers, right? And get the other person's perspective or what the other person is thinking about. So you should ask questions. And this is also how to help you understand what the other person is going through when you ask questions.
Mhm.
So, an example that I can share is when you get into a conflict or when I got into a conflict, there are actually three questions that you can consider asking, when you're in a conflict. Number one is, how did I make you feel?
Mm.
Okay, we have to acknowledge what the other person felt during our conversation or during the conflict, right? And the second thing is, what can I be responsible for?
Mm.
Okay, what can I be responsible for how I made you feel, right? And then the other person will say, because you raised your voice or because you said that I didn't do this, but I did it. So
Mm.
it depends on what the other person will say, but you can ask that simple question already helps you reach a common ground for both of you, right? What can I be responsible for? And of course, the third question is, how can I improve? Okay. So how
Mm.
can I improve in communicating with you, or how can I improve in my response to you so that you won't feel hurt or you
Mm.
won't feel angry, right? So how can I improve as a friend, as a mentor, as your manager, as your boss? Okay, so it's good to ask those questions, right? Even asking the tough questions, right? You should be prepared to answer them as well, right?
Yeah.
So both of you should be open to answering these questions so that you can reach resolution, an understanding, and resolve the conflict if there is a conflict, right? And speaking of, answering them yourself, that brings us to our next letter in the acronym, which is S. S stands for share. So you have to share your own insights, share your feedback as well, because this is a two-way conversation, right?
Yes.
So
Correct.
in
Correct.
order for the conversation to work or in order for you to communicate better, then you have to share as well. You have to be honest with how you're feeling, and you can even initiate, right, in the conversation if the person is uncomfortable yet in addressing the conflict or addressing
Mm.
the circumstance. Then you can be the first one to initiate. You can initiate to share how you're feeling or what you're actually going through, right? So you can be the first one to share as an example,
Mm.
because sometimes I've experienced this, that I initiated sharing and I initiated the conversation. Then that gets the ball rolling, that gets the other person to talk to you as well, to be open to you as well. It's good that you initiate it also, right? Because sometimes it takes one person to initiate the conversation or to resolve the problem or to resolve the conflict that you have with the other person. Even asking a simple or a simple how are you, and then you can already share that, ako, I'm not feeling so good, because it is okay not to be okay during these times. And you can share that, right? That you went through a time that you were also not okay. And that will also help the other person understand you and where you're coming from, right? So you
Yeah.
can be the first one to share. And especially now, right, during the pandemic, it is really okay to feel feelings that are not okay, right? Feelings that are sad, right? Or if you're feeling down, then it is okay, because everybody feels that at a certain point in time, di ba? We can't be happy all the time, right? We have to be honest to our feelings. We have to be authentic, right? To how we are really feeling and what we're going through. So I think honesty is the best policy, and especially when we're sharing, diba? We can be vulnerable when we share. Which brings me to the next letter, the most important, right, in the acronym. So letter T is for trust. If you trust the person, then you can really be vulnerable, right? And if you don't trust the person, then it's important to create a safe space, create a safe space where you can talk to that person or send a message to that person. So ensure that person that you are someone he or she can trust, right? So it's very, very important in the conversation that you trust each other, so that you can be open, so that you can share, so that you can ask all these questions. So you have to establish that trust. Okay, so you have to establish a safe space and establish the trust. And build rapport, right? Building rapport is part of the trust in order for you to have a fruitful and honest, open communication and conversation. So that is the acronym. So L for listen, A for ask, S for sharing, and T for trust.
Yeah, that those are very insightful, Isis. Actually, when I was listening
Yes.
to there are a lot of insights that I got. In order for us to have that open communication, we should listen to understand. Not it's not just
Yes.
a one-way street, but rather a two-way street, just like you mentioned earlier. Because how can you
Yes.
communicate to someone who is close to not or not wanting to communicate with you? So that is not communication. That is just simply, you talking to yourself and the other person's not listening. So that is
Yeah.
very much a difficult situation to be in. And in
Yes.
in addition, considering the love language that I have, which is quality time, like you mentioned about fobbing, right? Using your phone while you are
Yes.
in a
Yes.
family gathering, or if you're with your friend eating dinner. This resonated with me in a way that whenever actually I also am guilty of this as well. So but I am trying to also improve in that aspect, because it's super
Mm-hmm.
easy for you to be distracted because you're just simply in a
Yes.
computer and you have internet, so you can search a lot of things while you are in a video call, but at the same time it doesn't help the other person feel valued, especially
Yeah.
just like the experiences that I had in the past. Even up until now, I still do get them, or I still have those experiences in a way that I'm talking to someone, and even if it's just a video call, I make sure that my attention is 100% on them, even if it's just 10
Yes.
minutes, 20
That's
minutes, 30
good.
minutes, for them to feel valued and loved. So on my
Yes.
end, on the other hand, is that whenever I received that feedback of, okay, this person I'm talking to is using his or her phone or is doing something else. So the downside to that, to not giving your attention or listening or you know, seeing that person eye to eye during a conversation, it makes me feel like um I'm not worth the full attention of people, or that I don't feel
Mm.
valued, I don't feel loved. So it's the exact opposite of it, of giving your attention and not giving attention,
Yes.
because
Yes.
quality time is my number one love language. So it really affects me a lot whenever
Yeah.
someone does not make time for me, or doesn't give their full attention. But of course, at the end of the day, you really can't control people, but rather you have to communicate to them in a
Yes.
way.
Exactly. Exactly.
You should also share to them, right? When you
Yes.
ask,
Yes.
you also share in a way that
Yes.
communication, like you mentioned, is not just it's a two-way street. But again,
It is.
communication is active, it's not passive. And at the same time, the lack of communication is indifference, right? So you
Yes.
really have to be active in communicating. All right, okay, this is a good friend of mine. So whenever we talk and he or she is distracted about something else, I feel hurt. I feel all of
Yeah.
the negative things. So I don't want that hurt to manifest. And I know that this person cares about me. It's just that those times I felt that I wasn't loved. So I
Mm.
communicated in a way that I share to them, whenever we talk, it bothers me to see you distracted and not giving your full attention to me, especially when I am opening up to you, especially when
Yes.
I'm spending this is the crucial thing for me. Spending time with that person, because time,
Yes.
you cannot replace time. Each
Exactly.
time you spend your limited amount of time with someone, you are spending that lifetime that you have that is limited to them, and it cannot be
Yes.
replaced, it cannot be taken back. If you just realize that, okay, this person is spending time with me and that time is irreplaceable, all the more that you should value that, all the more that you should realize, oh, this person is making an effort to spend time with you, to give their full attention to you. So
Yeah.
if in a way they
Definitely.
give their time to you and not giving your full attention, that's not proper. The time management is not properly handled in a way. And at the same time, going back to my childhood, in terms of communication, I never knew the value of communication, because when I was younger, I didn't grow up in a household that communication is prioritized or valued at
Mm.
all.
Mm.
And since we
Yeah.
are all social beings, I felt crippled growing up. In all
Mm.
honesty, I felt crippled with having or learning the most important skill a human being
Yeah.
can learn at an early age. Because
Mm-hmm.
through communication, you build relationships. And to
Yes.
add to that,
Yes.
those relationships are healthy relationships if you know how to communicate properly, right? So
Yes.
growing
Yes.
up, I never had those healthy relationships that having to learn that proper communication brought to me, because I never learned how to communicate properly. So before, I
Mm.
thought communicating was letting your emotions take control, right? Because
Oh,
it
okay.
comes out naturally. Like when you feel this, this is what I'm showing to you. This is what I'm saying to you. I feel hurt. I feel not valued. And in a way, it changes my tone. It changes
Yes.
the
Yes.
words that I
You know,
use, especially when I'm
yes.
hurt. And that's not
Yeah.
good.
It's not good when you let your emotions take over the conversation or what you're communicating, because that will create some conflict, of course.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
when most probably if you're angry, then you raise your voice, and then
yeah.
some not so good words will be exchanged, right? And that will really not end well. But I know it's something that we can improve on, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's not easy, but um yes, we shouldn't let our emotions take over or take control of the conversation or our
right.
communication with the other person. I think we can, if the emotion is so strong, and you
Mm,
feel that it's already taking control of what you want to do, or your conversation, then you have
mm,
to pause, maybe, take a
yeah,
breather,
yeah,
pause and count 1 to 5, calm yourself down, and rethink about what you want to say. because when we are at the height of our emotion, the first thing that we want to say is usually not a good thing or not the best one. We have to take a step back when we are filled, or we when our emotions are heightened. So we have
Mm-hmm.
to take a step back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and in additional to what you mentioned about being responsible, right? Being
Yes.
responsible with the
Yes.
words that you use, the tone that you use, especially in a conflict, it really has a
Yes.
huge impact on how the in a way the situation would go. Would it be in one way that would conflict would continue to arise, or will it help not increase the agitation of the other person?
Yes, so that's why I said a while ago, observing while
Mm,
communicating is also important. You have to observe the other person, because it gets to a point that you can see that the other person is also already getting
mm,
irritated or
yeah,
annoyed or angry. And when you sense that the other person is already at that point, right, you can take a step back
yeah,
and say, okay, ano lang tayo, cool lang tayo, or
yeah.
kalma lang, right? Because those things happen, right? We can't
Mm.
avoid it.
And in additional to that, being responsible about stepping back and simply reflecting, okay, is this a quality conversation, or is this something that we can pause for now so that we can cool off our heads so that we wouldn't say anything hurtful that we would or we might regret afterwards. So in additional to being responsible is also do not expect the other person to know what you're feeling or know what you're thinking because it requires communication, right? So it's all
Yes,
about
yes.
communicating using your words rather than your emotions to tell the other person like, hey, I felt hurt by what you said, but I know it's not what you mean. So can you clarify on this
Yes.
so that I would be able to understand better and to not
Yes.
feel or
Yes.
assume, because a lot of
Yes.
people directly assume that they're being attacked, right?
Yes. Yes.
Especially
Yes.
with when it comes to like people like me. I used to be hurtful with my words because I didn't know how to communicate well, because that's how I grew up. That's how
Mm-hmm.
I was taught
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Yes.
I feel, that's what I'm going to say. Like hurtful words. In a way, I thought being honest is not being careful about your words. I never thought that I have to be careful with my words. So that part of me, I lacked
Yeah, I
responsibility
understand.
because I didn't know how to communicate properly. And lastly is
Yes.
communication have or proper communication have to start with yourself. All day, every day, you are with yourself. You're 24/7 by yourself and you have conversations with yourself. Either it's a positive conversation or is a negative conversation. So if you have positive conversations with yourself, you would expect that you would also know how to communicate or have that positive conversation with someone else. But if
Yes.
you continue on like me, not knowing how to communicate properly and having that negative conversations with myself, you would expect that that negative communication would also communicate on how you treat other people or how you communicate with other people, because that is what you do, that is your practice, that is what
Yeah.
you're exposed to wrap up the episode.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you the last question. What encouraging word or sentence would you want to share with those who are listening to the podcast right now?
I really do want to encourage everyone during this time and just give positivity, spread the love. And I just want to encourage everyone, first and foremost, to let's all make and create a better normal by having conversations that last, and remembering the acronym of LAST: listen, ask, share, and trust. And second is also pursue our passions in spite and despite of the pandemic.
Mm, mm,
So I want to encourage everyone to just take it one step at a time, one day at a time, or even 1 minute at a time. It's always better to do it than regret at the end, right? Even if you fail, that's okay. Just, I said, go back to taking it at one step at a time, one day at a time, 1 minute at a time. So I'm encouraging everyone to pursue your passions and have conversations that last. All right, guys. So, for those who want to visit my Facebook page, I have my own Facebook page. That's Isis Huang, financial advisor. And also, you can also visit our agency page. That's Mega, Associates of Film Life. So that's our two pages. And if you want to grab a copy of my poetry book that I just published, it's entitled Into My Heart. You can grab a copy at rootscollective.ph. So that's ROOTS, roots, and then collective, collective.ph. And just type the title of my book, which is Into My Heart. So you can grab either an e-copy or a hard copy of the book. So thank you guys for the support.
I hope that everyone who is listening to the podcast right now has gained a lot of insight and a lot of practical tips on how to communicate better, especially during uncertainty. And we hope that we
Yes.
would see you soon on the next episode. Bye.